The idea for where we're sitting, which is a space entirely dedicated to poetry, reading it, writing it, teaching it, learning about it, came together about 5 years ago for me. My wonderful architect, Eric Smith, put together concepts that we talked about in poetry. The palette of materials that Eric chose for this building were the stone, the wood, and the glass. The stone you see around you brings the outside inside. It's got a little hint of a medieval castle, so there's a fortress-like protection that surrounds you. This place is purpose-built, which means explicitly designed just for this. There's mystery about the building, and in some ways the building is a good metaphor for a poem, because the first time you approach a new poem, you go from line to line, the lines start to comment on each other. That same effect goes on in walking into this building. You come to a flat stone wall, which is very understated, and it's not offering you a lot. It's almost forbidding.
So you come up to basically a stone wall that has one wood portal in it, and how do you get through that becomes the decision point. If you've got a blank canvas, a blank piece of paper, I'm going to commit myself to creating something on that. What's the first step? Well, the first step is you have to open the door.
Once you enter it, you get this wonderful passageway.
And then you arrive to a very compressed space. That was very intentional, so that the more that you compress the space before you expand it, you highlight that transition, that pop, and then the idea of having this procession. Walking through that, you were then walking past 1,700 poets.
An organic part of this building is the poetry collection. Warren Douglas and his wife made this collection because they loved poetry, they loved hearing it, and they prized it. They were collectors in the best sense of the word. For me, it's a trusteeship I accept from them, but it's also a working resource. But if I'm stuck on a poem and I start reading a few of these books, quite often it'll take my language, which is momentarily confused, in some other place and breaks that logjam. What Warren liked about it is that it was not like a public library with all of his books lined up on endless shelves. The building comes around and embraces the collection. So in effect, the collection gives the building a beating heart.
So you've finished going through this procession of books, and the space stops, and to your left and right are full-height glass panels that slide back. You're able to then see a stone wall, which you've seen from the outside, you've seen it kind of wrapping the inside, and now it's presenting you with yet the final portal. And then you step across the stone threshold through a very thick stone wall that has a meaningful kind of sense of transition of space into a three-sided glass cube that gives you a 180-degree view. John really wanted to have the sense of being able to look out onto all this nature. You can hear the water, you can hear the wind, and that can kind of feed into his work.
This place is full of distraction, but it's the right kind of distraction. It's the leaves, it's the birds, it's the foxes, it's the wolves. I never feel lonely up here. I feel focused.
You feel like you're floating. So not only do you have the glass experience of the view, but you also have the kind of lack of gravity where you feel like you're suspended in space, which you literally are.
This office is hung over a ravine that goes down 50 feet with a stream running through the bottom of it. So when you're sitting here, whether it's in January with the snow outside or now in the beautiful spring, you feel like you're in the weather. And the field of vision has more than 180 degrees. So your peripheral vision can't even tell that you're sitting at the edge of a great stone edifice.
Structurally, it was not an easy chore. We had to drill down. We went down over 12 feet and built a 2-foot deep, thick concrete slab to kind of hold everything in place, and it actually penetrates into the space. So when you walk in, you're seeing not only you have seen the outside of the stone walls, but you're seeing the inside of those same stone walls. But then the stone comes back in as you enter into the studio, because the glass just kisses the stone. And when you retract the glass, the stone keeps coming through. So there's a very clear connection of that stone coming in and out and the glass just coming right up to it.
There's also a three-dimensionality to this which Eric plays with, and I think that is compatible with the way a poem works. Here we sit on the main and only floor of the internal structure, but if you go up the stairs, you're suddenly on the roof, and the roof is a completely finished space that you could walk on, sit up there on a sunny day, enjoy the leaves.
If you ground it in really solid history, which was part of the pleasure of doing this because of the history of his collection and the history of poetry and the history of writing. So not only, the idea of the traditional architectural plan evolved into more of a contemporary feel and the melding of an old stone wall with glass and steel, but we also discovered, as we do with many projects, the value of mocking things up to get it right. An architect creates a set of drawings, but if it doesn't get built, it's not architecture. It's just a nice set of drawings. But to get it built, you need amazing craftsmen. So we got to see the stone mocked up. We got to see all the wood finishes, try to meld the floor, the wall, and the ceilings all in white oak, but to give it a very clean, rich warmth and a very matte finish. And also the bookcases that you see, we mocked those up at several different heights to see how the space worked. Even though we had built a model of it, there's nothing like standing in the space to see, should it go to the ceiling, should it be lower? And so we finally kind of sight-lined it to say this is the perfect height. We can see enough ceiling going across to know the spaces beyond, but it also could hold all the books. When we were finally done, and it was his birthday, that was our deadline, he came down the path by himself and opened the door. He was just thrilled and spent, I think, maybe an hour or so here just by himself, and then we all kind of came up. I'm a firm believer that when someone gives a tour of their house, they're giving a story of not only the house, but themselves.
I can't imagine my life without poetry.